Okay, great. We're going to be talking about PLG activation, and we're actually going to be tearing down Airtable's onboarding flow because it's one of my favorite ones. I'm Jonathan Anderson, co-founder and CEO of Candu. We help product leaders build growth experiences. And I'm joined by Scott.
Yes, I'm Scott Christensen, co-founders of growthdesigners.co Slack community, and as well Growth Design Consultancy. We focus on those small, 1 to 5 million startups that are focusing on PLG as well as other onboarding and activation tactics.
Yeah, great. And how many people are in your Slack community now?
We have about 1,500.
Really
so
cool.
Started about 5 years ago and just slowly grown.
Really, really cool. Cool. And we're going to be tearing down what is one of the better onboarding flows we've seen.
Yes.
Great. Okay, but let's first talk, put it in context. So when you think about PLG experiences, there's lots of ways to think about it. It can be very overwhelming. A really, I think, simple way to kind of think about what you need in your product to successfully support a free trial or a free experience are things like activation. How do we get users to first value? Adoption. How do we turn users into power users of your product? And then conversion. How do we get them to pay or pay you more? Okay? So that's kind of just a general framework for how to think about PLG experiences. And we're going to focus on probably the most important one, which you might be able to guess, is activation, right? Okay? Perfect. At the end of this talk, by the way, we're going to leave you with a scorecard of kind of all of the kind of relevant experiences that you might need. And we'll also link to something that we co-created, a Figma design of kind of best-in-class experiences for different companies.
Something you can find in the Figma community. We published it, a month ago? Along with Kyle Poyer. We partnered with him and got that out in the market. So. Yeah.
All right, well, let's get into it. Cool. Okay, so tell me what's happening on this first slide with Airtable's onboarding experience.
Well, before we jump in, Jonathan, I just want to, I know who here has onboarded into Airtable? I'm sure a lot of you probably have. Probably don't really remember the onboarding experience, so we're gonna refresh your memory here. But the first question that they're asking here is, what team are you on? They want to know a little bit more about you. So why would they be asking this, right? They want to be able to figure out, of course, how to personalize this experience for you. Some of the things that stand out to me, they actually have this unique kind of right-hand panel. As you're answering this, they're actually kind of creating this, you call it a name badge or something. They're like creating a visual entity of your account. So it's psychologically, you're kind of making this entity as you're going along. So in fact, as you connect or click whichever pill that you're selecting, it actually dynamically changes out in that right-hand visual, which is really cool. From as a designer, it's a really nice touch.
Of the people in the audience, how many of you ask for somebody's role when they're signing into your product? Is that a question you ask? Okay, great. That's a really, really good question because it helps personalize the experience for their use case. And we're going to talk a little bit more about why it's such a good question. But actually, my favorite thing about this onboarding experience is that there's only one question on the slide. Make it really, really easy, one thing at a time. That's really one of the best ways to kind of kick off your product experience.
Yep, completely. So as we move into the next flow here, this is an interesting one. How did you hear about us? So this is not necessarily for the user themselves, right? This doesn't actually help a user. Who is this helping? The business. It's helping the marketing team. There's an attribution here, right? So Jonathan and I we were talking about this earlier, and you can almost just sense the tension here.
Yeah.
You know there was a fight. You know that there was a fight on the team not a fight, but there's maybe a disagreement about it. But what do you think, Jonathan?
Yeah. I think a lot of us ask questions for our team, right? How big is your team? How many, basically they're sales questions, right? Or marketing questions. Where'd you come from? And are you big enough for our sales team to reach out to you, right? Super, super common in onboarding flow. And you can tell that Airtable has this weird, uncomfortable feeling about it. Because if you look at the help text, this is an optional customer survey. They're at least being honest that they're this is not for you. It's not for your account. It creates no value for you.
A designer was like, okay, I have to write this copy. I did not want to put this in here because it's not for the user, right? As a designer, it's I want to advocate for the user always. But, I reluctantly type that in as copy, okay.
I think one other interesting thing about this slide is I think a lot of us have fear that we're going to have drop-off in our onboarding flow. And if we add one more slide or one more question, we're going to lose users at this really critical moment. what I want to assuage your fears here is that you can actually ask some really dumb questions at this moment, because which you shouldn't do, and we'll talk about what are the good ones to ask. But it's because at this point, the user's given up their email, so they've committed they want to be in your product, but they haven't yet seen it. So you're kind of building that tension with them. Hey, I really want to get access to it. So they're willing to do things like, for example, answer where they came from in this moment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these questions are key, and they're also like they provide a psychological kind of this feeling of progress, right? When you're asking simple, straightforward questions, just one question per page, you can ask a lot more than you think. It's like a conversation with the software. You can ask back and forth. You can ping pong pretty quickly, and part of that you start to see the user feeling more invested in this onboarding flow and a higher rate of completion, even though you're asking more questions.
You know how I know that Airtable is really a product-led company, though? Because this question is gone. They took it out.
Yeah.
That's how you know.
Yep.
Cool.
So this next question, this is, I believe, one of your favorite slides in the onboarding, right?
This is my favorite one, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me why. Why is this your favorite?
So this does two things really, really well. It asks what technology or what tools are you already using as a user? And the reason that's really valuable, it's visual, they have little logos here, is that you can then connect in your actual experience. Hey, you told me that you were coming from Google Sheets. You told me that you were coming from Microsoft Excel. So I'm going to prompt you with relevant recipes, workflows, automations, templates that I know are relevant to you because you selected this. I would say the biggest sin of this moment is if you don't use this data in your actual product experience. By all means, ask the technology. It's really easy, but then give the user something in return.
Yeah, you should always be asking things that you're going to be using, or asking for data that you're going to be using. I think that's a cardinal sin that maybe too many PLG-led companies will break too often. But one of the interesting things, the callouts here that I'll make is the subtext here is make your data more powerful by moving it to Airtable. They're giving you the reason why they're asking the question. And that's one of the key things as a designer who has designed many onboarding flows. You want to be able to give the reason as to why you're asking the question, because people, they're sensitive about their data, and if they're going to be connecting their Google Sheets, they want to make sure that you know why, why they're giving that to you. So that little byline helper text actually goes a long ways for conversion.
Yeah. Okay, I know, Scott, this is your least favorite slide in the deck. Why do you hate this slide?
Yeah, this slide. And we'll get to it in the next slide, but this slide is an unnecessary step in my mind. So take a second, kind of soak this one in. How do you want to get started? And they give you two prompts. So it's a binary choice. You can either use an app by Airtable, the default, or you can build from scratch. So why would they be asking this? Why not just give you, the app itself, right? And then build from scratch should be the fallback, And if you actually go to the next slide, you'll see that's what they're actually doing on the next slide. These two steps could be combined. So it's good to think about, making sure that this makes sense, right? Like you don't need to make this too long, to the point that we've already made that asking questions isn't a bad thing, but you want to be asking the right questions and not asking, frankly, dumb questions.
Yeah, I think that's well put. I think if you've gone to the trouble of making things actionable, like recipes, templates, workflows that you know are good for your users, do not prompt them to say, hey, do you want to start from scratch? Prompt them with the stuff that you know works, right? Your team knows these use cases that are valuable. You spend time building it out. You always include the start from blank or start from scratch here. That would have been a better thing to add here. But you definitely don't need to have that question before, right? You're putting it on the wrong path toward not being successful.
Yep.
So,
another interesting thing to point out on this screen is the kind of the jobs to be done here. With these templates, you start to see an understanding of, why is this user here? You want to understand a little bit about who they are, where they came from, but also, why are they there, right? This is huge for personalization and segmentation. But you see the four options. Funny enough, 3 of them are in beta and grayed out. So
and don't exist.
Yeah, it's kind of an odd way of doing this kind of jobs to be done. But you can find some key information through this, even kind of with this interesting way that they've done it.
Right. maybe, and this is also a good moment to prep the user. Hey, we know that they're in product, so you've given them product-related apps. Like we said, hey, this is your role. OK, these are your jobs to be done. Here's how you're going to get value from it. And even if they can't select these options, at least they're primed to think, oh, here's how I can get value from this. Here's all the ways that Airtable can be valuable to me. So this is a great continuation of that first role slide. Ask role first, and then go into kind of jobs to be done, not the other way around.
Yep.
Cool.
So let's tear this one down.
OK.
Okay. So we're asking, what types of feedback will you be collecting? At this point, you've already selected product feedback as the template, the recipe that you're going to be using Airtable for. So Jonathan, walk us through what's going on this slide. What do you love about it? What do you not like about it?
OK. Does anyone know what a wizard is, by the way? Have we heard this before? OK, this whole thing is technically a wizard, but this is the first real wizard question. A wizard is where you ask kind of one small choice that helps you kind of set up the experience for the user. And so what's really smart about what they're doing here is they're basically saying, hey, you need to add another option, and you'll see it update on the right. Because you're making a micro choice, you're actually kind of setting up your experience the way that you want it to be. Really, really good examples of this. I think Drift has an amazing example to check out. Airtables is one of my favorite. But I love this type of like small, really small decision. What's your logo color? Upload your logo. That helps them feel like they've actually created something in the product.
Yeah, there's something about owning it. They give you kind of this sense of ownership as you're customizing it. And one of the things that I'll call out here is that right side again. It's the continuous kind of illustration that's been dynamically forming and creating around this whole experience. And as a designer that thinks about the continuous flow, I love seeing something like this. I love seeing that illustration dynamically change and update. Again, like I've created some entity. I'm not just like some, SQL-based, line. Like this is an actual like thing that I've created. I am some sort of entity within this Airtable environment.
Great. And I think that actually leads us to the conclusion of this section. So wait, I have a little checkbox. Hold on. Really exciting. Cool. So a really simple way to think about this is, again, are we focusing on activation, getting users to first value, adoption, are they becoming power users, or conversion? We've created for you some, I guess almost like a scorecard to kind of go through and give yourself a ranking. How good are we on these different things? And we've also created a Figma where you can go look at all these different examples from best-in-class SaaS companies like Airtable to kind of see, just give yourself a little priming for what good looks like so you can kind of compare what you have within your software.
Yeah, exactly right. So we've just gone through one of the 9 options. This isn't necessarily like totally exhaustive, but these are the categories that we've focused on in this Figma community leave behind. So if you click to that next, you can go ahead and scan this. This will take you to the Figma community, download it, utilize it with your product teams, and increase your activation.
Cool. On that last note, if you want to build some of these experiences yourself without developers, obviously we recommend our tool Candu. It's what it's there for. You can do it. And also, if you're like, I'm not really sure where to get started here, I could use some help talking to an advisor, please meet Scott. We'll be happy to chat after the event. Uh-oh. Great. Design flaw. There we go.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Okay, we'll update that.
It's good to be updated. This talk has been a workshop, and we really appreciate all the feedback.
Yes, yes.
Cool. I think we have time for a couple of questions.
All right. First.
So my question is around, you mentioned kind of picking the role when you go through the process. What do you think about like situations where the person that's actually opening the account is not the only type of user that exists? So let's say like a project management tool where you have people that are like managing people that are doing the work, other people are maybe doing financial reports around that. So how would you approach that in this kind of onboarding wizard?
So just to understand a little bit more about your question, so this is like a proxy sign up for on behalf of somebody else, or?
Yeah, I mean the person that's there, let's say it's a product that has multiple types of roles in it. So the onboarding is probably not the same for everybody. And have you seen good examples of that? I haven't. That's why I'm asking.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you have a flow you want to share?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we call this the invited user flow. It's when you come into an account that's already been set up. How does it look, right? And I think a really good example of this is you have a technical user coming in who has like a maybe install script. Maybe you have a user that's coming in that is not so technical who needs to invite that user in. That's a very common flow for this. Another great example is when somebody's already added data into the account. and there's likely to be data populated versus what do you see kind of initially when there's not any data there. A good way to think about this is, again, sign-up survey. You probably, if you need them to identify who they are, use the survey. If they were invited, you already know the role. You can skip right ahead. I really like using empty states for this, actually, and thinking about how do we want to communicate with this person, and start to think about kind of in-product content as a way to really communicate the right message to that specific user type when they first land there. I personally hate a skeleton state. That's when you have an empty experience where data could be. I much prefer when it says, here's what the feature is, here's why it's valuable to you as a user, and here's the value that you're going to get from it once it's set up.
Yeah, and if you've gone through and had a personalized flow, you're going to be able to get dynamically helpful text in those, say, empty states. Yeah, empty states should always be actionable, right? Or educational.
How do you customize the flow for like a mobile use? Like someone's signing up and onboarding on a mobile device.
It's a good question. I mean, it always depends on the product use case, of course. But for mobile, I mean, you just need to take into consideration the form factor, right? So it might be a more lightweight flow. You may not have all the exhaustive options. You may not be, having that right panel that's dynamically updating and creating that like visual entity, right? You're gonna have to strip it down and make it more user friendly for thumbs, I guess.
To be honest, the hack here is you just cut out the right side panel. You keep the right, you cut the left. Yeah.
People from onboarding in mobile where they would just enforce onboarding only on desktop.
I don't think you never want to put in like a hard stop. You want to be able to make some. There should always be a completion, right? You don't want any dead ends on a mobile onboarding flow. But like for instance, there's a question here that's like upload your Google Sheets. That's going to be really hard on a mobile device. Like you probably go into Google Sheets, grab the URL, and put it in. It's like it's doable, and maybe you provide that option. But I mean, you got to think about that. Maybe just excluding that question, hitting them up in a post hoc drip email for that data point later on.
Yeah. I also love the we're best viewed on. If we're being honest, your mobile experience is not where you want it to be right now, and that's fine. That's totally fine. I think adding a best viewed on desktop come back, especially if you have a builder tool, that's super common. But yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. Great. Are we at time? Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Great to chat.